I'm Jami Floyd. This is The Best Defense. A night of drinking between two high school friends ends in tragedy. A 63-year-old man dead, and the teenager he treated like a second son on trial for his murder. Andy Galek says he remembers nothing about the incident because he did shots of tequila until he blacked out. Watching it all with me in our New York studio, forensic psychologist J. Buzz von Ornsteiner. Dr. Buzz, let me come over to you.
Sure.
You got this kid on the stand.
Yes.
He's kind of sympathetic. I mean, I agree with Jessica Henry. He's not blubbering up there about how, you know, Hans treated me as a father, and now they say I did this thing. But he's kind of in a state of shock, and that's consistent with what he says happened or didn't happen, or I don't remember what happened that night, right?
Sure, absolutely. What do we know about alcohol? We know that alcohol can change our personalities. We know that alcohol can make a person who has positive affect or is happier. We know it can also make a person who has anger or confliction more angry and more conflicted about their behaviors. We know it can also make a person more paranoid, more fearful. It can bring up conflicted feelings that they had kept repressed for many, many years. Alcohol is a very, very troubling drug. It's a drug that destroys our brain ultimately, but it does change our moods and our behaviors. As people, as a society, as a psychologist, just like everybody else, I want to know. I want to see this guy on the stand. It's so complexing. It's so puzzling. I want to kind of fill the pieces in. What made you do this horrible crime?
But Buzz, here's a post I have from Kelly who says, I remember blacking out, but when I came to, I remembered what had happened. Sometimes it came back in bits and pieces. Other times it was like flashes of memory. I just don't think this is his best defense. Don't most people remember what happened when they were drunk, or do people have different experiences with alcohol? Is it possible that one person blacks out and never remembers, and the next person does?
I agree with you, and it is true. We have to look at individual behavior. We have to see how a teenage brain may react to alcohol versus a mature brain. We have to look at what that person's going through, what their experience is with alcohol. A person can have very little alcohol and react very differently than a person who has a lot of alcohol. A person can black out and cannot remember what they were doing. That's why people usually tend not to get drunk when they get older. They learn from experience. Here's a person who just tried tequila for the first time. Maybe he did have conflicting feelings towards this family. They certainly treated him like a son, but maybe he had conflicted feelings towards his other family, and those feelings, that anger, that rage came out on this man, Mr. Winters. We don't know. We just have to hear from the defendant. We have to hear what was going on in his own state of mind and his past behavior.
But at what age does a child become an adult in the world of psychology?
You know, I go with the individual, but we know that an adolescent brain, a teenage brain, is very, very different than an adult brain. We got to look up here when we look at prefrontal lobe and how that develops. An adolescent, a teenager, is more impulsive, does not have a good concept of follow-through in terms of consequences. There's so many different things on how the brain is so different at that point and how that brain interacts with alcohol and drugs. We have an individual here who has a history of drug and alcohol abuse, and that does affect his brain, and that will cause damage long-term, but it also causes damage within the brain of how he handles his emotions. In addition to that, sometimes brains do not fully function on an adult level till an individual is in their mid-20s. We got to remember that. So it's the individual, but also brain development.
And for some, Dr. Buzz, never, ever does it function. They never grow up. That's right. I had a friend send me an email the other day, when do we learn our lessons? And this person was, I think, about 40. And I said, well, for some of us, never do we learn our lessons about having too much to drink. All right. All right, now let me come over to you, Dr. Buzz, again with this clock ticking in my ear, or I should say my producer talking in my ear. I want you to address what Paul says. What I want to know is what makes a 17-year-old continually and habitually drink to the point of blacking out. He's not looking for excuses, Dr. Buzz. He just wants to know, and he thinks we should all want to know, why someone would be in such a state of despair at such a young age.
It's true. This young teenager needed an intervention. Anyone who's drinking and taking drugs is self-medicating. We're looking at the behavior. The behavior is saying, I'm in pain. I'm in emotional pain. I'm out of control. I'm seeking control by trying to get some kind of feeling of euphoria. Drowning my sorrows in alcohol, by the way, doesn't give you necessarily a sense of emotional stability. It makes an unhappy person more unhappy. It makes a person who is suicidal more apt to commit suicide. It makes a person who has anger and conflicted feelings against family members or friends more conflicted, more angry, and also sometimes leads the groundwork for rageful acts like murder. This guy needed help. We always look at the behavior. We never look at the underlying psychological factors of why teenagers drink, Jami.
Yeah, we should not even be in this courtroom. This was a desperately sad story before Hans Winter was ever killed, murdered. Whatever happened in that house, whatever you think, whoever you think was responsible, the notion of these young boys down in the basement drinking almost a full bottle of tequila is desperately sad before the knife ever meets the body of Hans Winter. It's a terribly, terribly tragic tale.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Andrew Michael Galek, guilty of, and there's a X in the box that designates murder in the second degree.
All right, and there you saw a guilty verdict of second-degree murder, which many a defense attorney will tell you is a win for this defendant. He was charged as an adult with first-degree murder, which would have meant a sentence of life without any possibility of parole. Dr. Buzz, reaction from you?
Well, this individual, this teenager, he needed an intervention. He needed help. There are clearly some psychological problems that were going on. There was no intervention. This seems to have been the outcome of it, but I'm not completely convinced. There are so many unanswered questions, and as a psychologist, I want to know those missing puzzle pieces, and I think the viewers want to know, and I think we as humans want to know what was the motivation in this particular murder. Just too many unanswered questions. I want to know more, and again, I think he should get out. I think there should be treatment. I hope he gets treatment when he's in jail.
Yeah, so very sad that we yet again don't get closure with a criminal case. We had one woman who wrote in to say that perhaps the resentment he felt over troubles in his own family, seeing this other very happy family, motivated this horrific crime. Let's give you an update. On September 18th, 2009, Andrew Galek was sentenced to 34 years in prison, followed by 5 years of parole in the Colorado Department of Corrections. So that is the result in this very tragic case. And Dr. Buzz, you're right. This young man needed an intervention, and that intervention came in the form of this second-degree murder conviction. And with that, the best defense will rest for the day with a very special thank you to Dr. Buzz, J. Buzz von Ornsteiner, for being with me today.